tea sat in front of Tu Tien, but her hands shook too hard to hold it.
Here, let me help
20
you
days in
next.
captivity had taught her to expect danger everywhere. Jack watched her check corners, flour sack, shadows, doorway. Anna slid a
If
care card
scared,
across.
blink twice.
If scared, blink twice.
A little scared? Nah.
So if we
Outside,
look at it
Officer
this
Thu's
way,
car waited.
it makes much more
Inside,
sense.
healing had to
Don't you
start
think?
somewhere. Have you ever watched someone learn to trust safety again? A like and subscribe helps families healing from trauma
will be
find
okay now?
understanding. Is spared. I can cook. Jack shook his head. Not today. Today is quiet. No one argued. Because of that quietness, Tu Tien's shoulders dropped slightly. Outside, Officer Thu's plainclothes unit sat 2 houses away in an unmarked car. They weren't there to feel strong. They were there so Tu Tien could feel safe without seeing uniforms and remembering fear. Tu Tien's eyes moved around the room, checking corners as if danger might still be hiding in the flour sack or under the chair. Jack didn't tell her to stop. He sat beside her and lowered his voice. So today we do 3 things, he said. We eat, we drink water, we go to the clinic for follow-up. Tu Tien's fingers tightened around the mug. The clinic meant bright lights, questions, strangers, the feeling of being examined. Her breathing turned shallow. Jack noticed immediately. He didn't push. He offered choice, because choice is the first medicine after control. We can go early, he said, when it's quiet. And we take the back road. No market, no crowds. Tu Tien swallowed. Her eyes flicked to Anna. Anna reached across the table and placed a care card in front of her mother like a tiny shield. Tu Tien unfolded it slowly. If you feel scared, blink twice and Daddy Jack will know. Tu Tien's lashes trembled. She nodded once. Okay, she whispered. Early. Jack didn't celebrate. He didn't praise her bravery like she was a child. He simply nodded back, as if it was normal to need gentleness, because it was. That acceptance seemed to steady her. Before they left, Jack did something small that mattered. He walked to the orchard gate and replaced the latch, old metal that clanged too loudly, with a softer catch that closed quietly. Then he checked the porch light and left it on, even though the sun was up. Mom Loy watched him. Electricity costs money, she muttered out of habit. Jack glanced at her. Safety costs more. In the car, Tu Tien sat in the back seat with Anna beside her, their hands touching. Jack drove with both hands on the wheel, steady speed, no sudden turns. Every time a vehicle approached from behind, Tu Tien's shoulders rose, so Jack said, calm and factual. That's a delivery motorbike. Then, that's Mr. Dung. I recognize the helmet. Then, that's a farmer with baskets. He named normal things out loud, anchoring her back to ordinary life. At the clinic, the nurse spoke softly when she saw Tu Tien's flinch. The doctor didn't rush questions. He checked bruises, hydration, and sleep patterns with quiet efficiency. "Oma nightmares?" he asked gently. Tu Tien stared at the floor. Jack answered without stealing her voice. "Yes, loud sounds trigger her," the doctor nodded. "That's common after confinement and fear. Healing is not only the body, it's the nervous system learning safety again." Tu Tien's fingers twisted together. The doctor continued. "I can refer you to a counselor in the district. Trauma-informed, private sessions." Tu Tien's eyes widened. Fear of being judged, fear of people knowing her story. Jack leaned forward slightly. "No gossip," he said. "No waiting room talk." The doctor understood. "I'll arrange appointments at quiet hours, early morning or late afternoon. Your choice." Because Jack had given her that word, choice. Tu Tien found her voice. "Morning," she said quietly. "I sleep better after light." The doctor smiled and wrote it down. Morning it is. That small decision, choosing her own time, felt like the first step Tu Tien had taken on her own since coming home. On the way back, they didn't stop at the market. Jack turned the car toward the small riverside path behind the orchard, an open stretch where the wind moved through reeds and made a soft, steady sound like breathing. He parked under a tree. Anna climbed out first and pointed. "Look, the water is shiny." Tu Tien stepped out slowly, holding Jack's sleeve like she needed contact with something solid. Jack didn't rush her toward beauty. He let beauty come to her. They sat on a flat stone near the water. Jack spread the soft blanket Anna had demanded, and Tu Tien sat with her knees pulled up, watching the current move. For a long time, no one spoke. Then Tu Tien's voice came, barely louder than the reeds. "I didn't know if you would stop looking." Jack turned his head, careful, as if fast movement could scare the truth away. "I never stopped," he said. "Even when people tried to make me believe you were gone." Tu Tien blinked hard. Her shoulders shook once, then again. She covered her face with her hands, and the sob finally came. Quiet, contained, like she'd been saving it for 20 days. Jack didn't say, "It's okay." He didn't say, "Be strong." He did the only thing that matters in that moment. He stayed. He held her, one arm around her shoulders, the other hand steady on her back, breathing slow so her body could borrow the rhythm. Anna crawled closer and leaned into Tu Tien's side. "I missed you," Anna whispered. Tu Tien pulled Anna into the blanket like she was pulling her back into life. "I'm sorry," Tu Tien said, voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." Jack spoke softly, firm and clear. "No apologies for surviving." Tu Tien's eyes lifted to his. In them was fear, but also something returning. Trust. The trust felt fragile, but real. When they got home, Jack did something else that looked small but mattered deeply. He set a chair by the window where Tu Tien could see the road without being exposed. He placed a bowl of oranges on the table because the smell was familiar and clean. He asked Mom Loy to hang laundry in the back, not the front, so Tu Tien wouldn't feel watched. Mom Loy moved quietly, adjusting without questions. For once, she seemed to understand that healing required space, not commentary. That afternoon, while Tu Tien napped with Anna curled beside her, Jack stepped outside to check the gate one more time. That's when he saw it, a folded paper tucked into the new latch he'd just installed. His stomach went cold. He pulled it out carefully and unfolded it under the afternoon light. The handwriting was different from before, but the message was the same kind of threat. "Stop, or the next one won't come home." Jack's jaw tightened. He looked back at the house where Tu Tien slept, finally resting. Then he pulled out his phone and texted Officer Thu. New note. "Gate. Need you now." Sometimes healing and danger exist in the same day. One inside the house, one waiting at the gate. The question isn't whether threats will come. It's whether you'll let them steal the peace you're fighting to rebuild. Officer Thu arrived within 10 minutes. Plain clothes, no sirens. She read the note under the porch overhang, her face hardening. "Same network," she said quietly. "Different messenger." Jack kept his voice low. "I gave Tu Tien a healing day. I'm not taking that back." Officer Thu nodded. "You don't have to. We've been building the case while you've been building safety. The man we arrested is talking. We have names now, locations." Jack's eyes narrowed. How long until you move? 48 hours, Officer Thu said. Maybe less, but until then, I'm keeping the surveillance close. Jack looked at the note again, then folded it and handed it to her. She can't see this, he said. She won't, Officer Thu promised. You keep her healing, we'll handle the rest. That note stayed in Officer Thu's pocket, but its weight stayed in Jack's chest. He walked back inside where Tu Tien was just waking. Anna still curled against her side. Tu Tien's eyes opened slowly, searching the room before they found Jack. You left, she said, voice small. Jack sat on the edge of the couch, careful not to crowd her. Just the gate, he said. Checking the latch, Tu Tien studied his face like she was learning to read truth again. Then she nodded, accepting it. Because she trusted him enough to accept it, Jack felt the responsibility settle heavier. He couldn't tell her about the note. Not today. Not when she'd just started sleeping without waking every hour. Anna stirred and sat up, rubbing her eyes. Can we make soup? She asked. The kind Mommy likes? Tu Tien's hand touched Anna's hair gently. With ginger, she asked, her voice steadier than it had been all morning. Anna nodded eagerly. Lots of ginger. So they moved to the kitchen together. Slowly, carefully. Like people learning to live in a house again, instead of surviving in it. Jack chopped vegetables while Anna measured rice. Tu Tien sat at the table peeling ginger, her hands occupied with something familiar and safe. Mom Loy watched from the doorway, and for once, she didn't offer to take over. She just watched her daughter-in-law come back to life in small movements. The soup simmered, the kitchen filled with steam and the smell of home. Tu Tien's shoulders gradually dropped from her ears. Then Jack's phone buzzed, once. Short. He glanced at the screen. Officer Thu. Update. Can you step outside? Won't take long. Jack looked at Tu Tien. She was focused on the ginger, peeling in thin, careful strips. He stood slowly. I need to check something with Officer Thu, he said. 5 minutes, Tu Tien's hands paused. Her eyes lifted, fear flickering. Jack crouched beside her chair. She's parked right outside, he said gently. You're safe. I'm not going far. Tu Tien swallowed and nodded. Okay, she whispered. So Jack stepped onto the porch where Officer Thu waited in civilian clothes, leaning against the railing like a neighbor stopping by. We moved faster than expected, Officer Thu said quietly. The man we arrested gave us 2 names. We picked them both up this morning. One of them had photos on his phone. Delivery routes, safe houses, contact logs. Jack's jaw tightened. The same network that took Tu Tien? Same network, Officer Thu confirmed. And they're talking. The higher-level organizer is someone with legitimate business cover. We're building a case that will actually hold. Jack exhaled slowly. How long until it's safe? Officer Thu met his eyes. Safe is relative, she said honestly. But the immediate threat? 48 hours, maybe less. We're coordinating with regional units to shut down 3 locations simultaneously. After that, the network fractures. Jack looked back at the house. Through the window, he could see Tu Tien at the table, Anna beside her, both of them peeling ginger in quiet rhythm. She's just starting to breathe again, Jack said. I know, Officer Thu replied. That's why we're moving now, so she doesn't have to stop. Jack nodded once, grateful but tired. Thank you. Officer Thu pushed off the railing. I'll update you as soon as the operation is complete. Until then, keep doing what you're doing. Normal, steady, safe. She left without drama, blending back into the street like she'd never been there. Jack stood on the porch a moment longer, hands gripping the railing. Then he went back inside. Tu Tien looked up when he entered. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Everything's okay," Jack said. And it wasn't quite a lie. It was a shield, the kind you hold up so someone else can heal behind it. That evening, they ate the soup together. Tu Tien managed 3 full bowls, the first real appetite she'd shown since coming home. Anna chattered about care cards and asked if they could make new ones for people who feel scared. Tu Tien's eyes softened. "That's a good idea," she said quietly. After dinner, Jack did something he'd been avoiding. He sat down with Tu Tien while Anna colored at the table, and he asked the question that mattered. "Do you want to talk about what happened?" he said gently. "Not for the police, not for a report, just if you need to." Tu Tien's hands tightened around her tea mug. She stared into the liquid for a long time. Then she spoke, voice barely above a whisper. "They wanted money at first," she said. "Then they realized I knew your name, Jack. They thought you had more than you do." Jack's chest tightened. "Yet they kept me in a room," Tu Tien continued, voice shaking. "No windows. I counted days by when they brought food. I tried to remember Anna's face so I wouldn't forget why I needed to come home." Jack reached across the table, palm up. Tu Tien placed her hand in his. "I thought I would die there," she whispered. "I thought Anna would grow up thinking I left." Jack's voice came out rough. "She never thought that. Not once." Tu Tien's tears came silently. "I'm so tired, Jack. Tired of being scared. Tired of checking corners. I want to feel normal again." "You will," Jack said firmly. "It takes time, but you will." Tu Tien looked at him with red-rimmed eyes. "How do you know?" "Because you're already trying," Jack said. "You chose your clinic time. You made soup. You're here. That's not nothing." Tu Tien nodded slowly, like she was testing whether she could believe it. The next morning, Jack woke to his phone buzzing. Officer Thu's message was brief but clear. "Operation complete. 3 locations secured, 7 arrests, network dismantled, threat neutralized. Update tonight." Jack read it twice, then set the phone down carefully. He walked to the window where Tu Tien sat with her tea, watching the road in the early light. "So good news?" she asked, reading his face. Jack sat beside her. "Officer Thu says the people who hurt you, they're in custody, all of them." Tu Tien's hand froze halfway to her mouth. "All of them?" "All of them," Jack confirmed. "They can't hurt you anymore. They can't hurt anyone." Tu Tien's breath hitched. She set the mug down with shaking hands and covered her face. But this time, the tears weren't fear. They were release. Jack pulled her close and let her cry into his shoulder. Long, shaking sobs that felt like they'd been trapped for 20 days. When she finally pulled back, her face was blotchy and exhausted, but something had shifted in her eyes. Not peace yet, but the beginning of it. "I want to go outside," she said suddenly. "Not far, just the garden." Jack stood and offered his hand. "Let's go." They walked into the small garden behind the house, where morning sun touched the orange trees and made everything glow gold. Anna ran ahead, checking for new oranges. Mom Loy followed quietly, giving them space but staying close enough to help if needed. Tu Tien stood in the middle of the garden, face tilted toward the sun, eyes closed. "I forgot what this felt like," she whispered. Jack stood beside her, not touching, just present. "You'll remember," he said. a little more every day. Tu Tien opened her eyes and looked at the trees, the fruit, the house. "I want to help with harvest," she said, "when I'm ready." "When you're ready," Jack agreed. That afternoon, Officer Thu stopped by officially. She brought paperwork, formal closure documents, court dates, victim support resources. But she also brought something else. "The community meeting worked," she said. "Since Tu Tien came home, 3 other families have reported suspicious job offers. We stopped 2 potential trafficking attempts before they happened." Tu Tien looked up, surprised. "Because of me?" "Because you survived," Officer Thu said. "And because people saw that speaking up works." Tu Tien's hand found Jack's. She squeezed once. That evening, they sat on the porch while Anna played in the yard. The porch light glowed softly. The orchard hummed with evening insects. The world felt ordinary again. Not perfect, but safe. Tu Tien leaned against Jack's shoulder. "I'm still scared sometimes," she admitted. "I know," Jack said. "But I'm also here," she added. "Really here." Jack kissed the top of her head. "That's all that matters?" Inside, Mom Loy made tea. Anna brought her care card collection to show Tu Tien the new ones she'd made. The house settled into its evening rhythm, quiet, warm, protected. The threat was gone. The network was broken. And Tu Tien was learning, slowly, to trust that morning could arrive without danger hiding in it. Have you ever watched someone you love learn to feel safe again after trauma? Sometimes the greatest victory isn't the dramatic rescue. It's the quiet morning when fear finally loosens its grip.